You just have to.
Good.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Barb Shor. This is Rick Palmquist. And here we are. We're going to do our little interview. So to get this started, Rick, what did you do right after you graduated from vet school?
Well, I had a beard when I graduated from veterinary school, and the first thing I did was I shaved it.
How come?
I just did. It was over. You know, I saw my graduation picture. I thought I looked like Abe Lincoln, and it was time for you. And then MJ and I, who were married the year before we graduated, decided we didn't want to work together in the same town. We didn't want that marital stress and competition between practices. So we came to Los Angeles because we thought that was a big enough city that, you know, we wouldn't get in each other's stuff. And so we came to California and settled in Los Angeles. And she worked in a practice in Venice. And I worked in a practice in Sherman Oaks. And for a while, we had some really interesting commutes before we finally settled in.
Did you meet in vet school?
We did. We were married our junior year in vet school, but we were very quiet. We didn't like talk about it. She's a different row from me. And it was pretty funny, actually. Who was the large animal equine guy who knew everybody's business? The professor. Can't think of his name. Anyways, he knew everything that was going on with everybody, and he was stunned senior year to find out that we were married, because we didn't, you know, we lived in the same house together, but nobody knew that except the house. So yeah, so we came to California. I got a really great job. You know, CSU gave us such good education. You know, we were so well trained as clinicians when we left there. And all my senior year electives in small animal medicine with Dr. Tweed and those guys, they got us ready to just, you know, like drop in the trenches and start. So I got this really great job at a practice in Sherman Oaks, seeing celebrities and movie producers and script writers and all that kind of stuff, and musicians. And I did my first open chest heart surgery like 2 weeks out of veterinary school. I did a PDA.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, this practice was really cool. It had, you know, forced ventilation, anesthesia, it had all that stuff. So, and then I got really involved there in the big love of my life at the time, which was veterinary dentistry. And I really thought then that I was going to develop the dental specialty. Like I was going to be one of the people who helped develop the dental specialty. And in that practice, we had upper end clients they're very good about diagnostics and surgical procedures and things like that. And so I was sort of a little bit opposed by the veterinarians that were there, because I was doing a lot of surgery on old animals, you know, like 17, 18-year-old, 20-year-old animals. We were putting them down and doing major dental work on them. And they were like, you're going to kill those dogs with the anesthesia. And I was like, no, you just have to know how to do the anesthesia. Anesthesia is not dangerous if you do it properly. And the teeth are really poisoning the system. And, you know, and my mom was a dental hygienist, so I already knew all that stuff. So I was just really devastated by the state of dental health of our patients, you know. It was not a healthy situation to wait until the teeth are falling out and then just to grab some dental forceps and just rip out these rotten teeth, you know, when they were so loose. I knew about the heart problems. And what was interesting was they hadn't discovered the heart problem officially in human medicine at that time, right? So the link between dental disease, periodontal disease, and heart and kidney and liver disease wasn't really firmly established in the evidence-based fields. So in that practice, we started doing really aggressive dentistry, root canals, periodontal surgery, better quality extractions, gingivectomies, you know, just basic good quality dentistry like Dr. Emily taught us in those electives. And you know, we had crazy equipment, and we had Dremel tools, and you know, we didn't have a lot of the stuff that we have now. But we actually took that practice. In 1 year, we cut the number of cardiac cases down substantially. You know, there was no evidence collected, but like every dog when I started had mitral valve insufficiency, and and everybody knew that old poodles got heart disease and all that kind of stuff. And in 1 year of doing aggressive dental work, we actually had patients who had murmurs, their murmurs improved, and we saw fewer dogs coming in with heart disease at the end of that 1 year. And it was a couple of years later before they published a paper in Human Medicine that linked periodontal disease to mitral valve insufficiency. And so it was just like, it was very exciting. I was sure that I was going to become a veterinarian. I also was sure that I was going to become a partner in this really cool practice. And then when the time came, they were like, oh, there's no place for you in the practice. You can be a salaried employee and work 365 days a year, because I took all the emergencies. So that first year, I carried a beeper. I worked 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, which I'm kind of on the spectrum. So it's good for me to be focused. And so we did that. And I just took all the emergencies, did all the care. Everything that they'd done for us at CSU had prepped me for that. Like I just knew what to do. I got that job actually because on my interview date, I walked in and they had this x-ray up and they had this dog that was vomiting. They couldn't figure out why it was vomiting. And it had a tracheal stripe, and I diagnosed megaesophagus. And on the spot, they hired me. They were like, this knows this medicine. I was just like, thank God for radiology, because I'd never seen one. I just knew about it. I was like, that's a tracheal stripe. I think you guys should do a barium study and see. And sure enough, the dog had a megaesophagus. So they thought early, and it was just like the luck of the draw kind of on that, which was a big switch from when I did my interview for vet school. I was all stressed out about the interview, and I had the psychologist that interviewed me, and she asked me whatever question it was, and I don't even know what the question was. I don't remember, but I couldn't speak at all. I just was like, oh. But getting in anyway. So anyways, back to the dental stuff. So we did dentistry really crazy there, and obviously generated a huge revenue.
Uh-oh, I can't hear you.
Goodness gracious. I just realized that my gate is locked and I have to let this guy in the building.
Okay, let's take a pause then.
Second, I'll be right back.
Oh.
Yeah. So, sorry about that. My spa guy came, triggered all the dogs. So anyways, we did all that dental stuff, and I was pretty sure I was going to become a veterinary dentist. And then they said, there's no place for you in the practice except as a salaried employee. And I went, I doubled their practice. And I was like, I'm not going to just stay here and generate all this revenue and not participate in that. So then I went out and did relief work, basically all over Southern California. And that was really exciting because I worked in a lot of different hospitals. I could see the good things and the bad things of all those hospitals. And then I sort of fell into a practice in Inglewood, California. I was sort of actually snared by these clever older guys who sort of ran a scam on me to get me to buy the practice. And so I bought the practice, and it was a great deal. And I got the land and the buildings and everything associated with it for a really, really, really low price, because there wasn't a lot of a practice there. And so I was all ready to develop my practice and turn into this dental referral center and all that. And I got a call from a client who said basically that their friend's dog, who had been my client that had moved to New York, had become ensnarled by this quack veterinarian who was treating the dog's cancer with vitamins and herbs, and she was spending a lot of money on this, what I thought was inappropriate practice. And so I decided that I should go from Los Angeles to New York City and get this guy's license revoked and get him out of our practice, get him out of our profession, because he was obviously a bad actor. And the story of this is actually in this documentary film called The Dog Doc, which is about the guy that I went out to expose, who's actually a really brilliant holistic veterinarian named Marty Goldstein. But I flew to New York to get Marty's license.
Wait. Marty Goldstein was the one? I mean, he's become really, really.
Yeah.
Famous.
So it's Goldstein. But I flew out to get his license revoked. And I spent a week in his practice to document everything he was doing and then write him up and get him basically murdered professionally. And by the end of the week, I'd seen so many miracles. I literally fainted on the first day that I was in his practice. They brought this, these people were extremely wealthy, like on the board of directors for some major oil company or something like on that magnitude. And their neurologist was Dr. De La Junta, the guy who wrote the text that we studied in veterinary school. And he said the case was hopeless, but if there's anybody that could help, it would be Dr. Marty. So he sent them, hey, he's supposed to be here. So they said, hey, this is hopeless, but there's nothing more we can do for the dog. It's been paralyzed for a long period of time. It's not responding to treatment. So if you want to do anything more, go see this guy, but it's probably hopeless. And they carried the dog in on a stretcher, and Marty started talking all about acupuncture and having studied it in China, and waved this red book around and opened the red book up, and it had naked pictures of little Chinese men. I was like, okay, whatever. I'm just here to get your license revoked, and stuck some needles in the dog and waited 20 minutes. And Marty never stops talking. He's always, so he's talking. And then he says, come over here and let me show you how these needles, they don't come out. Like when the needles are working, the body actually grabs onto them, holds them. And I was like, yeah, there's a Barb. You're just out of your mind. And then like 20 minutes go by and he goes, come down here now, feel that needle that was in retention was held in, and it just slid right out in my hand. And I'm like, where'd the Barb go? Like, I don't understand this. I can't think with this. And then he took out the needles, and the dog stood up and walked across the room and put its head in the owner's lap in the chair. And I fainted. I literally passed out. And when I passed out, I had this weird shamanic journey that explained to me how homeopathy, acupuncture, herbal medicine, all these things were working in the body. And I was only out for like 30 seconds or so. And when I came back, I didn't know what to do, because I'm here to kill you professionally. I just had the most amazing experience of my entire life. And I couldn't even verbalize it at that point, because I'd seen all these things so quickly and so fast. There was no time to process anything. It was just like, this is how it's working, And so then I came back, and then I stayed with him. And Marty was a pioneer in cryosurgery. So he treated cancer with cryosurgery. So I saw all these cryosurgery cases. This cat that had squamous cell carcinoma, the whole jaw, and, that was like doing great, and I'm like, these cats just die. Like, what? So I spent a week with him. And at the end of the week, I was so depressed because I'd come out there to like kill him. And I hadn't told him I'd been there like on this false pretenses. And I don't, it's just innately in me. I don't do well trying to fool people. So I said, before I leave, I have to tell him the truth, So we're sitting in his old practice in the back storage room where there's an old unused surgery table, and he's eating a macrobiotic potato and some veggies, and I'm chowing down on this greasy cheeseburger.
What?
Listen, Marty, there's something I need to tell you, and I played this thing through like 100 times the night before, and I knew it was going to end with me getting punched in the face. And I was like, that's good. I'll just take it. I have it coming, And so I'm sitting there, and I said, Marty, I actually came here to get your license revoked. And I expected a really different emotional response from him. And instead of sitting back and crossing his arms and boiling over with anger, he actually leaned forward, tilted his head. And I swear to God, a little glint of light came out of his eye, and he goes, so what do you think now?
That's so great.
And I said, well, I think you should get the Nobel Prize. I've never seen so many miracles in any one place in my life, And then he crossed his arms and sat back and bulged his jugular veins. And I went, oh shit, here it comes, And he said, you know what I think of you? And he started pointing his finger at me. He goes, you flew halfway across the United States, closed down your practice because you thought I was abusing patients. He goes, we're probably going to be good friends. So we were, and then I left, and I went back to my practice and started changing all kinds of things, you know.
So back to why you went in the first place. What did you discover about your friend's situation with him?
Well, her dog was doing really well being treated for lymphoma with integrative therapies. And, you know, now, fast forward, you know, I'm the research chair for the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Foundation. We're raising, you know, money to do integrative medical research, which wasn't being done at that time. And so what happened is now we're actually have this study that's funded, that's in, I don't know, like its 8th or 9th year, collecting data on patients treated with standard chemotherapy for canine lymphoma and patients treated with one protocol, integrative Chinese medicine protocol, in addition to chemo. And, you know, we're finding longer survival times, which everybody in integrative medicine knew was the case, because we're all treating these dogs, and people say, you know, that dog's got 6 weeks to live, and then 2 years later, they're still coming to your office and seeing you. And in the beginning, the oncologists were very antagonistic, because if you fixed a dog that they said was going to die, then you made them wrong, which was never our intent. You know, our intent is just to help the dog. That's why we went to vet school. And after a period of that, and then that's really changed. Now most of the oncologists sort of work with us, you know, and that's very exciting. So anyways, that all started by me knowing that I knew everything, because I went to CSU, which is the best clinical school in the world, I think, still, and not being told that this stuff works. And there was another story, and this shouldn't be embarrassing to people because it's a timeline, but when I first started in that practice in Sherman Oaks, I had this Schnauzer, and the Schnauzer had chronic active hepatitis. And we didn't know that. It just had chronic ALT elevations. And we treated, we did everything you're supposed to do. And the test just got worse and worse. And I called Tweet a couple times and said, so what can you tell me about this dog? And he goes, oh no, you're doing everything right. You know, the next step is to get a biopsy. And so we talked to the client, and she left my practice, and I didn't see her for a long time. And then she came back and she goes, I'm here to have some blood work done. I went to see this other veterinarian. I said, what veterinarian? And she said his name, and I didn't know his name. I never heard of him. So we drew the blood and sent it out, and it came back and the liver enzymes were normal. And I was like, what? You know, how can I not have fixed the dog and somebody else fixed the dog? Like, what did they do? And he was an herbalist, and he treated the dog with herbs. And I was really angry about that, because he had this really crappy little dusty hole in the wall clinic that was not too far from our practice. And he was not a very good professional, in my false opinion at the time, right? He didn't even have an x-ray machine, for Christ's sake, you know, like, how can you practice medicine without an x-ray machine? And I was tempted to report him to the board that he didn't have an x-ray machine, but something in my beingness, that's kind of shitty, don't do that. And so I didn't report him. Instead, I asked her, like, what did he give? And he gave milk thistle. So then I got right on the phone with Dr. Tweet, and I said, Dr. Tweet, what can you tell me about milk thistle? And he said, there's no established evidence for milk thistle. And I hung up the phone, and I thought that meant it doesn't work. I thought that statement, there's no established evidence, meant it doesn't work. And now I was really baffled, because I started reading it. I've never heard of milk thistle as a weed. Like, what is it? You know? So I started reading about it, and I found out for 3,000 years, everybody's given milk thistle to anybody who turned orange, and lots of people got better. So I'm like, well, okay, so this was the beginning of my introduction into the fact that evidence-based medicine, while super important, is always the last to know, right? Because they don't know until everybody else knows. And then enough people know that somebody funds a study, and enough studies get done to prove that something works. So that statement, there's no known evidence regarding that, means nothing. It means we don't know anything more about that. So if the dog got better, we should be looking at these collectives and speaking together as a community of veterinarians, going like, anybody treated this? You know, which now with the internet, that's sort of evolving. You know, we can have a universal global Earth group where people put things up and go like, blah, blah, blah. And we have different groups with different purposes. So we've got the ACCHVM list where they talk about what evidence exists and what they can do. And we have the complementary and alternative veterinary medicine list where they go like, well, what do they do about this 3,000 years ago? It can't be the first time someone's turned orange in the history of dogs. Like, so what do we know? And Chinese medicine and all these things start to come in. So anyways, I coined, very early on, I coined this expression, results-oriented medicine, ROM, to talk about medicine that didn't have an existing evidence base, but had anecdotal histories that would suggest that there was something that should be looked at, and sort of blindly thought that if we got case reports written and case summaries of groups of cases written, that researchers would become interested and then start doing research because they would want to resolve conditions or do things. And I found out that's not economically how research works in the United States, you know. So, and then I said, well, I don't have enough money to do this whole evidence-based medicine game. I can write clinical case reports and clinical case summaries and speak at conventions and lecture. And, you know, ultimately I became the president of the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association. And then after a couple of years of discovering that alternative doctors were just as screwed up as regular doctors, they fight amongst themselves and they don't work together as a group. And I went, you know, like humanity needs work. And guess what? The medicine that's spawned by humanity that needs work too, you know? Yeah. So along come the drug companies and say, we have a lot of money and we're going to spend that to find cures for diseases. But really what they mean by that is we're looking for single molecular solutions that we can profit from. And I'm not besmirching the drug industry, because the drug industry is what it is, you know. They want a patentable molecule that can make symptoms better. And it's so bad that we're not even allowed to really talk about cure, and we can't even agree on what cure is. And anyway, so my whole life has been this crazy standing in the interface between evidence-based medicine and the complementary groups, watching everybody change the names of what they call things and saying, can we just get along enough to actually do what we know we need to do? So the foundation was founded by a guy named Carvel Tiekert, who was the first executive director and president of the
American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association. Yeah.
And he had, through $25 donations for sympathy cards as memorials for deceased pets, raised about $200,000. And so that was the seed money that started the ACCHVMF. And we wanted to keep the name.
Wait. HVMF, when I knew it, it was AHVMA. Is that different?
Separate groups. There's actually two.
There's separate groups?
Two groups. Which is.
Wait. When you get too close to the mic, I can't hear you. So, wait. Now you talk. Yeah.
Yeah.
In and out a little bit. Okay.
Let's see what I can do about that. So anyways, AHVMA.
Yeah.
The A group was a group of the professionals who are practicing integrative medicine in the United States.
Right. That's what I was involved with for some years. Yeah.
And so they came together to help people share their stories and to teach each other what they had discovered, and really in hopes of bringing integrative medicine to the profession as a whole.
Right.
And a lot of those people that formed AHVMA were pioneers in the United States. They were the first Chinese medical practitioners, the first acupuncturists, the first homeopaths, the first herbalists,
right,
and fixed unfixable cases. And they were very excited about it. And they would go to conventional meetings and then go up after the conference lectures and speak to the speakers and try and create interest in, hey, I had a paralyzed dog and we did acupuncture and it got up and walked. And they were very frustrated because they were basically blown off and not included or incorporated, and no one would even look. So they formed this independent group. And later, when I was president, then we reactivated this group called the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Foundation.
Oh.
Foundation with an F.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that the foundation is about funding integrative humane clinical trials that pair conventional treatments with alternative therapies in the hopes of expanding the evidence base for integrative medicine. And by definition, integrative medicine are procedures that have at least some modicum of research evidence or mechanism of action understood that makes sense scientifically, right? That's different from holistic medicine, which is, anything that might encompass connecting all the connectivity and things that are associated with things. And all these words are imprecise in many ways. But
yeah, I thought they were interchangeable, that functional medicine and integrative medicine are replaced holistic complementary medicine. It's
really mean specific things. So complementary medicine actually was an attempt to bridge the gap between alternative medicine, right? So initially you were either doing regular medicine, which was actually not traditional medicine. Traditional medicine was regular medicine.
Yeah.
Thousands of years. And then it was differentiated into Western versus holistic and all these different things. And so holistic practitioners didn't want to be separate. They, as holistic practitioners, we know that it's all connected. And so we should actually be in communication, in relationship, in community, at the table, which is what the whole translational medicine movement is about. Translational medicine says you bring all the players together and they talk about what they know and what is the solution, so we can more rapidly speed interventions to chair side so patients can benefit from those things, right? And people are like, yeah, we have a study about vitamin C being used in cancer in like 1933, but it's only known by the people that were in not the cancer industry, but in the vitamin industry. And those are all dead because they're not alive anymore, So the knowledge is there, but the people who are currently at the table are unaware that that's the case. So then somebody like Dr. Goldstein finds out about vitamin C and tries it and finds out that for certain kinds of cancer, vitamin C seems to be beneficial and tells people, and then everyone laughs at him because they all know that vitamin C causes oxalate crystals in the kidney, so it must be dangerous, so they don't even look, which not true, right? It's just not true. You can, if you give enough vitamin C for a long enough period of time to a susceptible patient, you get oxalate crystal urea, but it isn't what happens in most patients, But instead of looking and finding out what's going on, we discount that. Or the conventional guys do a study without talking to the alternative guys, and they use the wrong dose of vitamin C. They don't use enough. And then they find that it doesn't work. And then they happily publish a paper that says, we've done a study and we've proven that doesn't work, So anyways, that's been my whole life, is like that stuff. And then I was very much disliked by some important people in the holistic movement because I said we need to do research if people are going to take what we do seriously. And they were like, they'd been slapped and insulted enough that they were like, look, I'm going to stick the needles in the paralyzed dog, and the paralyzed dog is going to get up and walk. And I'm going to take the dog from the specialist that they've said is hopeless, or that the people don't have $10,000 to do back surgery on. I'm going to get that dog up and walking, and I'm just going to quietly smile and wave a middle finger at the quote unquote experts. And unfortunately, what they did was keep people from going for surgery that needed surgery. And then that generated more antagonism and more separation and distance. And then people would say things like, oh, you can't do chemotherapy. You're going to kill the dog with chemotherapy,
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden now the oncologists hate alternative medicine because they have one voice that's singing this false information in their area. And everybody has hurt feelings and damaged anecdotal stories instead of sitting down. And I got really fortunate because one of the top oncology practices in the United States basically popped up in our backyard. And when they built the practice, I went, oh no, this is going to be the beginning of World War III for us. I don't know what's going to happen. But it turned out that things went really, really well. Her name was Mona Rosenberg. She's now retired, but Mona's really respected as an oncologist. And I immediately started sending patients to her because she's like, wow, she's the best person in the area, so I'm automatically going to refer to her. And we started working at distance together, never talked, right, for like a year and a half to 2 years. And then one day I called her up and I said, hey, Mona, I'm the crazy alternative doctor that treats cancer with herbs and vitamin C and stuff. And I just would really like to talk to you because you send us patients and we send you patients and we're helping a lot of animals, but I want to know what your sense of things are. Can you say that alternative medicine is helping? And she goes, well, I can't say that because I don't have a study. I can't say that because I don't have a study. But certainly it seems like the patients that you send us are doing better than the patients who don't do it. That's why we refer you patients back. And that's really odd for specialists to refer generalist patients, right? So with no financial benefit, right? Because I'm not paying her to do that. She's not paying me to do that. We're just talking to a person whose big brown eyes go, isn't there anything more? And you go, yeah, you have lymphoma. You really need to do chemo. Go get chemo. Your dog will live longer than if I just treat with herbs. But if we come back and we do chemo and herbs together, a lot of times they do better. And there's still no study at that point. But we had lots of case histories, you know. And then she said, so I can't say that what you do is good. I can't say it, but I can say that what you do isn't bad, right? And she said, I said, so Mona, this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to get us to team teach at the ACCHVM meeting about how to work with your oncologist. I just want to make bridges. I just want to make bridges so that we can exchange information. And so we gave this lecture. It was wildly successful. She lectured about the oncologist's view of things. And then she lectured about her view of working with an integrative doctor. And she would say, I don't know what you do. I don't understand what you do. And you don't know what I do, and you don't understand what I do. But when we work together, we can help the patient. And that seems to me to be what veterinary medicine is all about. That simple thing. And so then every time they get a new oncologist, we'd have a little battle, you know, because they're like, you know, and then somebody would talk to them and say, hey, don't say too much negative stuff. You might get slapped in the face when the dog's still here 2 years from now, you know. And I started a campaign in my practice by having my clients send a thank you card to the veterinarian and the oncologist who made the initial diagnosis, even if they had said things that turned out not to be correct, because I thought it was really important to keep the relationship there. And so patients who live longer in this results-oriented medicine, which didn't have an evidence base yet, those patients that were living longer could actually just say back to a person, not, you said my dog was only going to live 2 weeks and here it 2 years later, which doesn't make us friends, right? And then it doesn't help the suicide situation either. So this actually started making people, they would send a thank you card going, hey, my dog just celebrated his 2-year anniversary. Thank you so much for making the diagnosis. Thank you for being part of his success team, right?
Well, that's great.
So that's how that all sort of happened. So now my practice is a little tiny building. It's about 2,500 square feet with we have 3 doctors and, well, ideally we have 23 staff, but with COVID, we're down to about 15, 16. So it's a little uncomfortable right now. But we see about 18,000 patient visits a year. And about 1% of my visits are vaccines. The rest are like internal medicine, hearts, kidneys, all those kind of things. And I still feel like I'm incompetent because I have so many patients that I know there's an answer for somewhere out there in nature, but that I don't know yet, you know? So it's just this constant, what we were told in CSU, you know, they told us our first week, you know, what you learn here is going to be outdated in 3 years or 10 years. Your job is to learn how to evaluate data and how to collect it and how to help your patients and have that lifelong mission to keep doing things. And in the middle, get divorced because it's not easy being married to me. MJ's brilliant and lovely and beautiful and an amazing partner and an amazing mother and an amazing grandmother. And you know, she's like considered killing me several times, I know, but she's just, I couldn't do it without her here. And it's very strange because our relationship when we first graduated wasn't, we'd come home and talk about cases, you know, we were in 2 different practices. So we come home and talk about cases. And then after a while, she tried to work with me and I was terrible to work with because I would tell her how to do things all the time. And she just got mad and said, you know, I think I know how to spay a cat, just go away. And one night we sort of decided it was better to stay married than to work together. And then we sort of didn't talk about medicine very much after that for a long time. And now that she's retired, it's really interesting because now she's come back and she's continuing to do her CE, and she became an acupuncturist actually very early on in all this stuff because she was paralyzed and acupuncture helped her, and then she couldn't just give steroids and muscle relaxants to dogs anymore. And that's how she became an acupuncturist.
When I saw her at the reunion, she told me that she was an acupuncturist and that influenced you in the beginning too. Yeah.
Totally. Because I'm stubborn as a freaking stick.
I can tell.
Allowed me to do what I did, because when people would tell me no, ever since I was a little kid, if people would tell me no, I'd just go ahead and do it. I had a knot on the top of my head because I knew that I could stand up under our kitchen table, and I was taller than it was. So I would stand up and hit the table and do that like 10 times and then cry because it's like I could stand up under the table. And I was stuck at every step of the way, I wanted to be a large food animal veterinarian, and I broke my back and dislocated my shoulder and couldn't do that work, and changed from a large animal emphasis in vet school my junior year to become a small animal veterinarian. And then I went to work on cats, and I worked in a cat practice, which was great. But after a short period of time, I really missed the dogs. And that's how I came to work on dogs and cats. It's just, there's always a crisis for me,
I want to, you shared with me a story about, a good story during when you were injured and COVID and all this stuff, and how you were led to the Chinese medicine, that the Chinese herb that helped you.
Well, part of my development as an integrated practitioner was actually becoming more connected with my own personal intuition. And, there's so many different ways to talk about this. And unfortunately, all the words are emotionally loaded and connected to quackery and craziness. But intuition is just a way that we know things, and everybody has slightly different ways that their knowledge manifests. Most veterinarians who've been practicing 40 years, like people that are at our reunion and stuff, have experienced that when you walk up to an exam room and you ask yourself, you're like, I wonder what this is. And before you have opened the file, it's a pyometra case. Or you read the chief complaint and you just know it's a pyometra, and you walk in and sure enough, there's pus coming out of the vagina and stuff. And sometimes you have to choose between therapies. Like, do I give this antibiotic? Do I give that antibiotic? And one doesn't feel right and the other one feels right. And you pick that one and the dog gets better. That's intuition,
Yeah.
I think if we want to be really hard scientists, then we say that thought has a field, because we know that that's true, right? That you can think a thought and the field can be measured. And that probably what's happening is that there's information in whatever the nature of this energy field around all of us is, that we can collect and access, but we don't know that we can do that, So we can sit next to someone at a bar and get a creepy feeling from them. We know that, right? That's intuition. We can see people and filter that through prejudices and think we know who they are. That's not intuition, right? That's bias.
Right.
A black person and you go, oh, I better grab my wallet, if you've got that racist bias. And when the minute that you think that and you separate yourself from that person can feel that, and then they become uncomfortable and they say something negative to you, which reinforces the bias. But so if there's this energy that is associated with thought and with existence, and we know that that's true, a really good book on that is about subtle energies. God, I just went, is it Patukas? What's his name? But anyways, we know that in physics research, you can measure thoughts. Like there's a meter literally that beeps when you have a thought. Like you can sit across the room from somebody and people project their thoughts different distances. Some people can only do it like a few inches away from their head, and other people can do it, 20, 30, 40, 60, 100 yards away, They can beat a meter just with a thought. But thought has an energy. And
yeah, but let's go back to your story.
So my story about intuition was just 2 years before COVID. I was going through a Chinese herbal book and I couldn't turn the page. And as a partially intuitive person, when you physically can't do something that you should be able to do, like, why can't I physically turn this page? There's got to be some reason. So I looked around on the page and found an herbal formula that seemed to be something that I was supposed to learn about. So I learned about this herbal formula. I couldn't see any need for it, but this feeling was still there that I couldn't turn the page. And this stuff happens to me all the time. So I told my office manager, buy this herb. It'll probably go outdated and we'll throw it out on the shelf, but I want to look at the rest of this catalog. And there's something about this that's distracting me. So 2 years before the pandemic, we put that herb on a shelf and I forgot completely about it. I didn't even remember that I had it. And then 2 years later, before COVID, so in January of 2020, I developed COVID really badly. And I have problems with COVID. When I get COVID, it's not a cold. I bleed internally. I have all kinds of issues. And I was pretty sick and nothing was working for me. So it looked like I wasn't going to make it. And I sort of fell asleep and I said, listen, if there's any message you need to send me, you better send it to me in a dream because I don't think I'm going to make it till the morning. And I had a very vivid sort of prophetic dream that told me to go to my office and take 10 of these pills that were on the shelf. And that was what I needed to do. So I sort of roused it out, and much to my wife's chagrin, because she didn't know I'd left the house because I could barely walk at that point, I got in my car and drove to my office and I went in and I took the herbs and I took 10 pills, and it's sort of an herb that you're only supposed to take a lower dose on because it has some toxic ingredients. And I thought to myself, well, I'll probably die from this herb. And then when they do the autopsy, they'll blame my death on alternative medicine. But it was the only thing I could do. And I took the herb and then actually started feeling better. And within 20 minutes, I felt better. I was sure it was placebo. I was like, there's no way, as sick as I am, that I'm better in 20 minutes from some herbs. They haven't even had time to be absorbed and enter my system. Like, this doesn't make sense. But every dose I took, I was better. And then I was back to work by the beginning of March. And then the pandemic started, I think the second week in March, something like that, officially started. And then we went into all that. But it was a couple months later that herb formulas were published from China about the herbs to take for COVID and how you could reduce the fatality rate by like 50% or more if people would use Chinese medicine. So I took those reports to CNN News and they were promptly crushed and suppressed, all that. Now they're actually doing studies now. UC San Diego is actually doing studies on herb formulas for COVID, Chinese herbal formulas, by Dr. Chen, who is the person that I told CNN News they should contact and interview. So thank God for me, that saved my life. And because I've done the integrated medicine, I was able to save my mother when she had cancer. We got rid of, she had multiple tumors. We got rid of multiple tumors, got her a bunch of extra time. She had 5 brain tumors. We got rid of 3 of the 5, and 2 of them were shrunk by 50%.
Wow.
And when the oncologist, when she told the oncologist, you want to know what I did? He said, no, I don't want to know. And she got really angry. And I explained to her, I said, no, he can't deliver these cares. So it's very stressful for him. He doesn't know what to say to a person who goes, isn't there something else? If he's seen something like this, it's an uncomfortable situation. It's not good, but it's uncomfortable. And through that whole course, I kept being brought back to animal communication. And I kept pushing it away. I was like, I'm already doing herbs and all this crazy stuff. And I used to be the Southern California Veterinary Medical Association North Bay chapter scientific program person. And then all of a sudden I went crazy holistic and sort of lost all my friends. And well, we knew him when he was a good veterinarian, but now he's a crazy holistic veterinarian. And that was like a 20-year period where I was sort of isolated. And I the last thing I thought I could do is associate with an animal communicator, because I thought, Jesus, if this turns out to be true and then I start using animal communicators, they're going to have me in a straitjacket in a mental institution.
How do you
And
think I've felt for the last 30
yeah,
years?
and it was so funny when we connected and MJ told me that your life path. And so one of my receptionists kept telling me, there's this animal communicator that I want you to meet because you guys would just do such great work together. And I was like, oh, no. I don't want the psychiatric evaluation team from LA County showing up at my practice. No, thank you, please, And I finally got desperate. I had this Australian Shepherd. The lady lived in Denver, or in Colorado, not Denver, but she lived in Colorado, and the dog was having uncontrollable seizures. And she would drive from Colorado to Los Angeles, and we would treat her dog and the seizures would stop. And the local vets couldn't control the seizures. They couldn't get them under control. And I love this dog. Its name is Boo. And her name is Jessie Christie. And Jess was she was an extraordinary person. She was not wealthy. She was dedicated to this dog, and it was an Australian Shepherd. And I have a weakness for Australian Shepherds because the dog that literally saved my life as a teenager was a Aussie Border Collie mix that was amazing. But she would bring Boo out, and Boo would, we would treat Boo with homeopathy and herbs, and the seizures would come under control. And then she could go back and live there. And one day she called me and she came and I said, I think it's time, but I have this weird sense that there's something else to do, but I don't know what to do. And at that time, I only had a few tools. I mean, it was early in my development as an integrative doctor, and there weren't classes you could take. There was like a meeting once a year, and it's just like you're sort of learning as you're going. And integrative medicine is very love driven. Like you put yourself in really uncomfortable positions because love tells you should. Like, I can't put you to sleep today. There's got to be something I can do for you. Let me see. Oh my God, you've lived way longer than I thought. How did that happen? I don't know. But so Boo was in my hospital and he didn't come out of the seizure. He was pretty much comatose and not in good shape. But every time I try and put him to sleep, I go to put him to sleep, I just get, you're not finding what you need to find. And I was like, I think he's got cancer. I think there's cancer in this dog. That was fine. This cancer always gives us a good justification for euthanasia. Like, it's cancer, it's okay, not kill him. And but it was like, it's not right. There's something intuitively, I was picking up something, near the rib arches in the back. And I was like, I just don't know what it is. And I was so desperate to save this dog that I said, I don't care about my ego. I don't care about my professional reputation. Besides, nobody needs to know about it. I'm going to call this animal communicator and have her come out and talk to Boo. So I called her, and her name is Janet Hicks. And Janet came to the practice. I was a complete asshole. I was an evidence-based skeptic, right? I was like, I'm not going to tell you what's wrong with the dog. Rah, 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 rah. Here's the dog. Talk to the dog. Tell me what you think, right? And I really wanted her to fail. I honestly, egotistically, my ego wanted her to fail because I wanted to not have to deal with this complication of animal communication. And I had in the chart, in the medical record, written down the 10 problems that the dog had in order of severity. And Janet, I want to cry when I tell this. So Janet went in the room, closed the door with my rude introduction. It was not an energetically welcoming situation. She sat down with the dog, who's semi-comatose, and came out of the room with a list in her illegible handwriting. And I love you, Janet, if you ever see this. That's not a criticism, but she channels as she does the communication, her hand just writes. And it's not real legible handwriting, but now after years and years of working with her, I know how to read her stuff. But at that time, can barely read it, But she made a list of the 11 things that were going on with the dog. And the 11th thing was a sensation that told me that it wasn't cancer, that it was a slip disc. And so we treated the dog for a slip disc, and it made a full recovery, and it lived like another 6 months or a year.
Wow.
I can't.
Wow.
And at that point, I was screwed, right? Because you can't go back. You can't, after the initial thing, if someone does a miracle, you go, there's no such thing as a miracle. There's no such thing as a miracle. And then you take your eyes down and you see a miracle, and then you can't deny the miracle anymore. All you can do is go, well, this is uncomfortable because now I have to learn about all this other crap. And then how am I going to fit that into my practice and not get sued? And is the board going to report me? Is someone going to say, like, he told this person and she's diagnosing it? She's not diagnosing. She tells me how the animal feels, and how the animal feels is a puzzle piece in the evidence-based medicine, Western medical, holistic medical exam. So if the Chinese medicine says, you got this, and the Western medicine says you got this, but these are the same thing, at that intersection of that data, that's where the answer is, So Janet and I are really good at puzzle pieces together, and she speaks her language and I speak my language, and we know each other really well. So we do this all the time. And after having so many insane stories, which I could just sit here and tell you stories about Janet and incontinent cats and at-home problems, behavioral problems with dogs, that once we had a communicator explain what was going on and we addressed that with the owners, the problem just stopped, No drugs, no herbs, nothing, just the dog being heard, all of a sudden stopped the entire behavior. So I have just tons and tons of these, and I still felt really self-conscious about animal communication. Like, I get communication, but I don't get communication like she does. Like, she has a two-way conversation that starts out with, hi, who are you? Oh, do you like me? I do, I like you. I don't get that. I go like, what's wrong with this dog? I get a picture of something and I don't know what it means. And I have to wrestle around with that. So I'm not intuitively gifted like Janet is. But we all have different gifts, right? So, I don't do surgery as well as a lot of people. I don't do orthopedics as well as other people, but I can send people to a specialist and I can recognize it's an orthopedic problem, and I can work with somebody who has that talent. So why can't we work with people who have different talents than us? They've done research on medical intuitives that show that the intuitives have the same sensitivity and specificity as an MRI machine.
Wow.
And I one of those people is my client. She was struck down and almost died. When she came back, she has 3D X-ray vision. She sees tumors in people. In my practice, and she walks through the waiting room, and then she goes up to me in the exam room and whispers in my ear, you need to take a chest X-ray on the beagle. He's got 3 tumors.
Wow.
Out. Makes me jealous. I want to be able to do that. I don't want to have to radiate a dog to get that information. She just looks at it and it's a curse for her. She's an artist. She hates it.
Why does she hate it?
She's an artist. She doesn't want to know what's going on with everybody she sees on the street. She doesn't know what to do. Do I tell a person, hey, you have a tumor the size of a jelly bean in your pituitary? She doesn't want to know, but she has to because she sees it. So these relationships with these people have really changed me to worry less about what people think about me. And I think getting older, part of our brain dies when we get older, so we don't worry about what other people think as much. And that's maybe my brain is dying, so I'm less concerned. But there is such a wealth of help from animal communicators working with veterinarians. And there's quacks and there's charlatans, and that needs to be separated. But there's validation and usefulness that needs to occur in that field. And so now I'm in this wacky TV show that I love. I mean, I absolutely adore the show. It's just called All Paws Pet Talk TV. And we haven't released the show, but it's up on the internet and we've already had over 100,000 viewers. And it's a panel. It's like The View, sort of the protocol of The View, only, with nice people talking about animals. And so it's myself as an integrated veterinarian, a host who's an actress and an entertainment person, an animal communicator, a dog trainer, and a person who's a homeopath and has a special interest in sustainable medicine and sustainability in general in the environment. And we just have guests on and we just have chats and we talk about what comes up. So that show has been, I consider success by different set of metrics. Like, I don't care if we're making a ton of money. I don't care if millions of people watch the show. I feel it's a success if one person watches the show and realizes, oh, my dog's dying or my dog is getting sick and I can't tell why it's getting sick and I don't understand that. and my regular veterinarian says everything is okay, like, where can I go? What can I do to get more information? Because I'm feeling drawn to do that. And sort of in this love-centered, love and truth-based culture that sort of comes out of and should be what medicine and integrative medicine and economics and education and society globally is. In that sort of paradigm, where poetry is evidence, like I think I'm on the right track, and then a verse drops, and it's like, what's in the verse happens 2 weeks later, and you're like, okay, I'm in the realm of consciousness where that needs to happen. And then however that consciousness speaks to you, being able to utilize that to identify what's true and isn't, I think becomes really important. I think one of our biggest problems right now in society, not just medicine, is separating disinformation, misinformation from balderdash lies, and misdefined terms, and just general confusion that comes from people speaking all these different tongues. Because we all speak English, but we speak a lot of different dialects. There's neurologists English, there's herbalists English, there's acupuncturists English. It's all the same language, but if you don't understand what the terms really mean, then you can't look past the barrier to see what's on the other side of the wall.
Yeah, agreed. We probably need to wrap up.
Yeah, I think
a little while, huh?
So
just well, I don't even know what to say. This has been so fascinating to me. I mean, I could talk to you for hours,
I
and
think
we will, and I'm going to be on your TV show.
Yeah,
in November. So, is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion, just you want people to know?
I think CSU is an extraordinary place. My son is a veterinarian in a residency there, doing his second year of dental facial surgery, kind of a specialty residency. And I'm so pleased that he's back there. It's like, I feel like my family's gone full circle. He's a Davis grad, and CSU I hope CSU doesn't ever change from this clinical base that it has, that to give graduating students this incredible history of how medicine works and where they're going to go, so that they can go out and use the tools to make themselves the best they can possibly be. And I'm so grateful to our class, because I think our class is kind of a unique group of people. I don't think we were a normal class. We had a lot of different people that really welcomed me and were very kind to me. There were people that I never would have met or interacted with otherwise. And this reunion's really made me realize how much I was affected by them, and how little I was actually afflicted by the professional education thing. There's so much stuff mentally that makes us think that something was worse than it was, and the reunions really swept away a lot of that and allowed me to remember a lot of really good things. And I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and talk to you. And
well, this has been great. One thing that I realized, you talked about your son, who I got to meet. Do you have other children? Is there any other family stuff you didn't mention?
My oldest daughter she has 2 children, so I have 2 grandchildren. She just had one 3 months ago, and the other's 2 years and 3 months old. And she's a commercial real estate evaluator, works for a big company that does pensions. Her second child, oldest son, is in Northern California. He's a pediatrician. And my third one is becoming a veterinary dentist and lives.
That's great. That's really great. Sounds like you've had a very successful, productive career and family. And it's wonderful.
It's good to see you, Barb.
Good to see you too, Rick. Thank you
Bye.
so much for doing this.
Take care, guys. See you at the 50th.